Okay, welcome to the very first episode of the In the Balance podcast with your hosts Ryan Thomas and Charlie Thompson, where we'll be diving into all things equilibrium, longevity, and fitness over the long haul. Yes, super excited for our first episode today, which is going to be centered around the first 90 days at equilibrium. And I think for us, this is probably one of the most magical times at equilibrium. It's where we see some of the real change and transformation happen from our incredible client stories. So yeah, very excited to dive in. We've got our sort of initial 10 steps laid out here to expect over 90 days. So yeah, should we dive in?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. The first step before your 90 days begins really is the discovery call. Now usually this is a sort of 20 to 30 minute call. And this is really the first step of us getting to know all about you, where you're at, what you want to achieve, what your history with training and exercise is like, and really making sure that we have a good fit for both of us before we go any further. At Equilibrium, we are really centered around a long-term view of fitness, of really trying to help people maybe break habits that they've had for a really long time. The major piece there is that they've usually picked up and put down fitness usually for 10, 20, 30 years. We're trying to help them break that pattern and establish fitness as a long-term part of their life so that they can go out into the world and do the things that they want to do and not be limited by their health. We're looking for those people, and when we find them during that discovery call, when we know that we can help you, we will make that very clear. But equally, on those calls, if we get the vibe that this is a real short-term fix, you're just looking for something to tide you over for the next 6 weeks, we'll also be quite upfront in letting you know that equilibrium's probably not quite the right fit for you either. And that genuinely just comes from a place of we're not here to do this kind of tango for 6 weeks and get a little bit fitter, a little bit stronger, and then never see you again. We really want to help people for the next 12, 24, 18 months to create transformation like they've never achieved before. So that's really what we're about on those calls, and why it's kind of the first step in our journey. So that's probably number one. I guess the next check-in point, and this is before you've even stepped in the gym, is the intake form. So Charles, what is the intake form?
So the intake form is an opportunity for us to, again, have a space where we can have some of that sort of vital information. For some people, well, for everyone that joins through us, it's just some general stuff to get to know about you, but also for us to dive that extra little layer deeper that we won't necessarily cover on the discovery call perhaps. So a little bit about injuries, experience, what you may have done before, where you've come from, past experiences, what you enjoy, what you might not enjoy if you've done stuff before, fitness related, other gyms perhaps, anything like that. Just helps us really sort of dive into that next layer and just understand and build a little bit of a bridge between you and your coach. Yeah,
there are some really powerful questions on that form as well, which are skillfully woven in there to help clients start to begin the process of taking ownership of their journey. So within that questionnaire, there are questions around how is this time going to be different to what you've done previously?
Well, it is exactly as we sort of phrase it a lot of the time. It is a journey. I think a lot of the time people expect that perhaps it's just going to be a case of, signing up, doing some sessions, and it not really going much further past that or beyond that perhaps. But for us, when we can sort of have those sort of deeper questions as well and get people thinking a little bit into themselves as well, it really helps sort of build a bit of a path forward as well. And it's just a really nice place to start the journey from, really.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest apprehensions that people generally have is I'm not so fit, I maybe haven't done this for years, but the beginning of this journey is all about meeting you where you're at, right? It's like us discovering what has the last few years been like, what have been your barriers, and therefore how can we start to curate this journey for you to give you the highest possible chances of success from day one. Okay, so step number 3, the evaluation session. It sounds big, it sounds scary, but it's really not. It's kind of the first part of your journey inside the gym at Equilibrium, and our first part of really being able to build out this experience at the right level for you. So, first of all, you're probably going to come to the gym for the very first time. Lots of people have had pretty negative experiences, if I'm honest, with gyms in the past. So usually walking into the beautiful barns that we're very lucky to have here, welcoming team, seeing the community for the first time, meeting people that maybe a similar age, similar mindset to you, can be the first time that maybe your stress levels begin to drop and you start to feel like, oh, this is a place that I could really see myself. So I think stepping into the building is a big part for the first time, but that evaluation session is really about getting to know you and exactly what you want to get out of this. So we really try and challenge clients to be vulnerable, to open up, to share, because the better that we understand like what success means to you, the better we can build out this process for you, and it is different for everyone. So I think that's kind of like the mindset around session 1, and within that there is goal setting. We look at setting some real focus points around lifestyle, nutrition and training. We do a full body composition analysis, look at just some baseline data to look at where we're at today, so we can track that over time and make sure that what we're doing is getting us to where we want to be. But I think one of the biggest elements for us is probably the movement assessment. So we'll do a full movement assessment during that session, look at how you move, which is a very common coaching term, but what that really allows us to do is look at your ability level. It's about discovering like what is going to be the right movements for you. Is there any limitations that we have? And so we can then begin to really kind of personalize and tailor the program to you at a really high level from that day onwards. So before you've done any sessions, we know what level you're at. Do you think you want to add to that, Charles, from your coach's eye?
No, I think it's touched on it really nicely. I think it's a real important session. Obviously, it's arguably the most important one. Getting started, jumping into the swing of things. But it's a real balance between the person starting and for us as well, in my opinion. A great experience working with a coach is heavily dependent on your relationship and your ability to work with that coach. So I think having that sort of dedicated hour to sit down and really get some clarity on where you're at, where you're starting, what is right for you, like you say, that sort of right level of challenge, meeting you where you're at is a really, really important thing. It allows us to do our job better as well, which I think a lot of people might sort of skim over as well. It can be quite daunting, like you say. Luckily we have, again, the really nice space to come into, and we have a good time, we have a good laugh as well, but it's still a daunting experience, or can be. So I think, just having that hour, building that clarity, getting a real sort of fresh idea of where you're actually starting is a big thing. Point 4 for us is our first week. So this is obviously following on from the evaluation session. By this point, we would have obviously had that, got all the details, had that initial conversation, set a bit of an initial sort of plan of attack, I suppose. It's a nice way to put it. By this point in your first week, you're obviously going to be booking in for your first sessions, your PT sessions. And there's a lot in there, really. You've obviously got everything that you've focused on in the evaluation session with the goal setting. Obviously, we start small, go for a bit of a snowball effect, and it's just getting the ball rolling. So the first session can be new. If you've done it before, then you might not know what to expect, but walking in, obviously, again, as we touched upon a second ago, it's really nice to come in, get that first session, meet some new faces, meet the coaches, perhaps a different coach than what you sat down with originally, and yeah, just get started.
I think that first session is a really big moment for people. You know, you've been talking about this thing, you've filled forms out, you've come and had this initial chat, and suddenly you're doing it, you're really doing the thing. You know, a lot of the time as people come in, you can see the nerves. Without a doubt, time and time again, at the end of that first session, there's a level of surprise in like, I actually really enjoyed that. That was good fun. Like I'm gonna come back again. And I think people begin to surprise themselves. You know, strength training has had not necessarily a bad rap, but it's certainly had its perceptions in the media over the years. People still think of it as this kind of like bodybuildery thing, when it's really, you know, especially past 40, it's what everyone should be doing if they want to have a body and continue to do stuff as they get older. And seeing people that are similar age, similar mindset, all of a sudden is like, wow, okay, you know, people really do this, and that kind of Arnold Schwarzenegger mindset starts to fade. And all of a sudden, I think in that first week, it really is about horizon broadening, because people will have a perception of, you know, I'm a lady in my 60s, my fitness is going to be about here, that's what ladies' fitness in the 60s looks like. And then all of a sudden they'll be in a session with a lady that is very similar in age, very similar maybe to look at, but all of a sudden can do things on the gym floor that it's kind of mind bending. It's kind of like, how is she picking that up, and how's she doing that kind of press up thing, and how's she pulling herself over a bar? Like, I thought that was for my kids or even my grandkids. And yeah, you suddenly see people go, whoa, there's this whole new world of possibility that I'd kind of closed myself off from. Yeah, I think that's a lot of what we see in that first week. So after that initial first week, we dive into a process of, obviously you're in the gym 2-3 times a week doing your small group personal training sessions. I think, you know, you're experiencing, if you haven't done small group personal training before, it is this sort of beautiful blend of the personalized approach that you would get from like a one-to-one coach, but then also the community aspect that you get from large group classes, all entangled together into this incredible kind of organized chaos. But it works incredibly well. So I think you're doing that in your first week. You will then go into your first check-in. So that's generally a sit down, just like we are today, where you'll meet back up with the coach that you're working with. You've probably had some back and forth with them throughout the week as well. And then sometimes it's a step back on the scanner to do another body composition analysis, see how things are changing. Sometimes it's just a chat about progress, and sometimes it's full kind of accountability. You know, you said you were going to do this, did you do this? Which is vital in a coaching relationship. So those check-ins start to become really important. Yeah, how is the sort of check-in process from you?
Yeah, it's always a really exciting one for me. I think, like you say, by that point, you're a week in, you've had that sort of initial sort of breakthrough, you've done the thing, you've got started, you've jumped into it, and then it can be that first point of, okay, I'm really doing this now. You know, this is where I am, this is where we're going. You know, we got our focus points, and like you say, it can be a chat sometimes that's, you know, super positive. Sometimes it's a little bit of a, what's going on? You know, what are we doing? Like you say, we said we were going to do this thing. This is what we're here for, and then that's where our role comes into it as well. You know, we want to have a great time. It's all really supportive, and we're obviously going to build the best plan that makes everything as easy as possible for you. But it can be a real, you know, supportive thing, a real useful thing to just get you going in that right direction, and it just keeps that momentum going.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can go there. Most time it is very warm, friendly, encouraging, but we are hired, we're employed as coaches, and sometimes that means having more difficult conversations, in all honesty. We're trying to sometimes help people break patterns of behavior that have gone on for decades and help people take real ownership of their health, sometimes for the first time ever, because we work with a lot of people that are maybe in a negative pattern of looking for that next thing to blame. They're looking for that next thing that kind of, oh, it's their fault, it was the boot camp's fault, it was the gym didn't give me the support, it's their fault. We're really trying to help guide people and help them break patterns of behavior they might have had for a very long time. So sometimes that means meeting them with a level of challenge that they may have not had before, but it's all out of love, it's all out of care, and it's all wanting to make people as successful as possible. And those more challenging conversations, they always lead to good things. I think that's probably, that gives you an idea of, you're into your sessions, you're having these weekly or bi-weekly check-ins depending on what's right for you. Kind of, Charlie, can you just give us a bit of insight around you're 4 weeks in now, what kind of changes would you say clients start to experience that far into the journey?
So for me, usually it is a little bit more sort of following that momentum again. Obviously, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a monumental amount of time, but it's a fantastic amount of time to realize what you're starting to do differently. Again, we would have had those initial sort of chats, those reviews, again, keeping in contact with each other back and forth along the way. And it's a real nice amount of time to be like, okay, I've been doing this last few weeks now, it's a little bit more of my routine, and it's just cementing everything in a little bit more. So again, you got your focus points, you're perhaps starting to realize what is possible, seeing the other members here, seeing what you can achieve and where you're at. And I think there's a level of fun to that as well, which is always exciting. But yeah, I think like I say, it's keeping that momentum going, and it depends what sort of level you're going at. It's probably a good way to say it, or it depends how strict you're going. Some people, like to take their time and get into things a little bit more. Some people are a little bit more full steam ahead, so it's obviously something to be considered and taken into fact. But yeah, I think it can be quite eye-opening.
Yeah, I think at that sort of 4 week mark, most people have probably started to feel stronger in the gym. They're probably feeling more energized outside of the gym.
Yeah.
And in terms of that horizon broadening, we're well aware that people will come into this with a bit of a mindset of maybe I'll do this for 6 weeks and then I'll go to this place and I'll do this. Usually, and especially after speaking to the community that we have here, by that 4 week mark, those horizons probably have been broadened a little bit further than what people initially expected. And suddenly it's like, oh wow, imagine where I could be in 6 months' time, in 12 months' time, if I kept this up, and I'm already noticing these changes.
I think it's quite, like you say, easy for people to see it as a bit of perhaps like a kickstart, or just getting back into the swing of things. And it's quite easy to do. It's obviously always with good intentions, but again, coming into this sort of community, this sort of environment where everyone is looking to be better and progress, is all of a sudden it goes from, okay, I'm going to absolutely smash this 6 weeks, I'm going to be on top of the world, to wow, how the hell am I going to do that in 6 weeks' time? And all of a sudden it paints that longer picture, and yeah, it's cool to see. It's nice.
Cool. So this next one's a big point in the journey, number 6. So it'd be kind of around week 5 to 6, we would have a review of the initial 6 weeks, and then a potential invite to full membership. So what, Charlie, what does that conversation look like?
So it's in similar fashion to the check-ins that we would have along the way. We're still having that review of what we've done. So going over previous weeks before, depending on when your last check-in was, how are we getting on? How are the things that we set going? How are they fitting into your routine? Are you finding them okay? Enjoying them, struggling with them, whatever it may be. Having that initial review, and then just trying to cover and sort of summarize how that initial 6 weeks has been. What did we get out of it? What went well? What worked for you? What might not have? And it's a chance for us as well to cover those next steps. You know, we want to keep fueling that environment that we have. It's so supportive, it's so focused on growth and, you know, becoming better, that if we have someone that's, you know, really fitting into those 6 weeks and they're feeling like it's a place that they can, you know, keep following that same journey, then it's a place where we can sit down, talk about next steps, how it's going to work for them going forwards, and seeing how we can sort of fit it into their plan ahead.
Yeah, I think a couple of really good key points there. Like when we have the right people in the community from a values standpoint, they believe in what equilibrium is about, how that just fuels the environment, and that having the right people, it enables the entire cohort of members that we have here to progress together. It's not necessarily that someone is like a bad apple if they don't get invited to full membership, but it's more that they might just be not values aligned, in that they, you know, the sort of equilibrium is centered around longevity. We're here to, you know, not completely destroy people. We want them to be able to walk out the front door at the end of the session. And sometimes people come in and that's not quite what they want. They want a bee sting or that kind of thing, and that's just kind of not what we believe in. You know, that inflection point at the 6 weeks, it is really about like, are we aligned? Do we believe in the same things? If so, like here's the plan going forward. You know, here to get you from where you are now to where you want to be in 12 months time. Like that, this is what it's going to take. So I think it can be a bit of a sort of prescriptive session as well, looking at like what that actual program to take someone from, you know, this initial 6 week kind of momentum builder into like, this is how I get to where I want to go, is definitely a part of the session too. But yeah, we will also factor things in like attendance and that side of things to truly make sure, like, you know, you're going to be a great addition to the community. We're going to enjoy working with you and you're going to enjoy working with us, because when that's all working together, then you know, this place becomes a very, very special one.
It's a huge thing, isn't it? And it's very purpose driven is the way that I like to see it. You know, we're not here to, you know, mess around. Like, we have a great time, we have a good laugh, but we're not here to mess around. Like, there is a purpose to it. So we want to make sure that, again, like we both said now, everyone is on that same path, looking for that same journey, that same outcome. So
Charlie, this client that you've been working with, they've smashed their initial 6 weeks. You're like, you know what, they're going to be an incredible fit for our community. After that point, they've decided, yes, I want to continue this journey. What does that initial kind of long-term goal setting session look like? Like, what are the key things that from a coach's perspective you want to understand about the client and where they want to go?
So for me, it's, again, understanding why they came to us in the first place. Usually those goals don't tend to change that soon. You know, within 6 weeks, that goal, that target is always, or usually roughly in the same direction at least. So it's just digging into that a little bit more, but putting a bit more of a sort of targeted approach behind it. Like we say, that initial 6 weeks is very sort of momentum based, getting the ball rolling, getting you into a really sort of healthy, positive position. But from there, when you've got that sort of infinite time ahead, it's just, okay, how can we really nail this now? What does this look like for you? What have you got coming up? How are we going to make this work? Logistical side of things as well. But just taking that extra layer in again, you know, this is what we wanted. Can we get some, you know, some numbers behind it perhaps, or like a specific outcome that we can break down along the way, make it all a little bit more sort of realistic, achievable, instead of just having this goal, which is ultimately the goal, perhaps for like a few years or even a few months down the line, whatever it may be. But how can we break that down? What are we going to do? How's it going to work?
Yeah, I think you know, we've been doing a lot of work around helping members dial into goal setting from an identity-based point of view. So I think at that point where it is like, yes, we're continuing this journey, it's like, great, who do we want to be in 12 months time? Like, what does that person do on a monthly, weekly, daily basis. What does their routine look like? Because people can be very aware of, like, you know, I want to be able to chase after my grandkids, I want to be able to do this walk up Kilimanjaro, those kind of things, and there are these little kind of milestones, but it's like the deeper level is like, who are you trying to become, and helping the client paint a bit of a picture around that, trying to reverse engineer it in a way that feels tangible. It's not like this kind of esoteric, ephemeral, like, who am I becoming? It's like, this is what I'm going to do this week. I'm going to eat more protein, I'm going to go on this walk, I'm going to hit team training, and I'm going to go to my PT sessions. That's building that person. And I think a lot of the time when we have had members that have sort of tried and not been successful with fitness in the past, it is because they are so overly attached to one goal, running the half marathon, you know, completing the 10K, doing the Tough Mudder. They really haven't thought on a deeper level about where do they want to be in 12 months, where do they want to be in 5 years, and who is that person that they want to be at those different junctures in time. So I think those are some of the more like higher level conversations that we try to challenge members with. And sometimes it's the first time they've ever thought in that way, but I think it's absolutely vital in helping people break that pattern of the, you know, picking up and putting down of fitness that we see so commonly across members' lifetimes.
Well, it's very easy for things to be focused and driven by an outcome. People have that goal in mind, they know what they want to achieve, which is obviously fantastic. That's why we're here. That's great. But it's a case of sitting down and having those conversations, like you just said yourself. How can we, you know, create the system that's going to get you there instead of just sort of brute forcing your way there? You know, anyone can jump on a strict diet or a crazy, you know, exercise routine and do it for a week, or if that, or 2 weeks. But it's a case of how can we create the system that is getting you to that outcome in the best and most efficient way possible. Because that's ultimately what's going to last as well. If you're doing something that's temporary and it feels like a chore and it's really difficult to get done, it's not going to happen, or it's just a matter of time before it stops happening. So once you've got that system and that routine and you are that person, it's so much easier, and you can just almost relax into it and just trust the process, and ultimately you're going to get that outcome, but it's just going to be a lot better along the way.
We want it to get to the point where it feels like breathing. It's just a part of your week. It's just, I show up, I do my strength training, I do my aerobic training, and I'm just moving towards that person that I want to be week by week, day by day. And it's not this thing where I'm having to, you know, hold on by my seatbelt and just about get through and survive, because it's never going to last. It's never going to last. And, you know, I think we all know that the key kind of insight that personal trainers get by, you know, seeing this on a daily basis is those people that have been consistent for years, it doesn't have to be this big arduous thing, and they get to remarkable places. You know, I think that's the thing. Sometimes when people come in and they see, you know, like I said before, a lady in her 60s deadlifting body weight, and it feels impossible. It's like, how on earth did that happen? And it was like, just day by day, week by week, she got stronger. All of a sudden, you end up somewhere that you previously had not imagined. Number 8 here, we've got team training. So, yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit about team training, Charles?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a different, not a different vibe, but a different sort of approach to the standard sort of small group personal training, sort of strength focused sessions. So we open up the whole space. It goes into like a big group, a big team training, up to 20 people. So it's a lot more focused on your sort of cardio system and your cardiovascular health instead of, you know, the sort of traditional strength training from the PT sessions. It just goes incredibly hand in hand. You know, a lot of people will have a piece of that pie, a piece of this pie, and nothing tends to really blend. They just stick to one thing. But it's just sort of completing you and what you're capable of. Like I say, it all goes hand in hand. You're going to feel better, have more energy, be able to do the things that you love more frequently, or just to a higher level, which is always great. And then it's a great laugh as well. Obviously, more people, we're all sort of in it together, getting through the session. Yeah, it's good fun. It's got its purpose, but it's just a little bit of a different vibe.
Yeah, so I think just to add to that, to give some clarity around it, if we look at longevity really simplistically, we would say we need strength training for our bones, joints and muscle mass as we get older. We need nutrition to control our body composition. Really, how much body fat we're holding is really down to what we eat. The aerobic fitness piece is really the sort of key to how long we live. So for us, team training is a way to really drive that like aerobic fitness that can, it can take more time in terms of like literally physically doing the exercises for longer amounts of time to bring our aerobic fitness up. But that's how we kind of look at it as a system. And we know from the research that the higher your aerobic capacity is, the longer that you live. So it's like, the strength training, the aerobic training and the nutrition is that kind of longevity system per se. So last one we just wanted to touch base on is like, what does the actual process towards the end of the 90 days look like? And generally this is very bespoke still at that point in terms of like what kind of support structure that you need. Some people want a cadence of weekly or bi-weekly or monthly check-ins still at that point. It really depends on the member, their history with fitness and how much support that they need. But one of our goals is to really help members become more autonomous when it comes to their health and fitness, because it's really the only way that they will be able to troubleshoot and problem solve for themselves long term, which is what's going to allow them to be successful with fitness long term. So there's a big focus on helping members develop more autonomy here, but there's also that balance with support as well. So the quarterly MOT is a potential part of that support structure, in that for long-term members, they probably don't want to see us on a weekly basis at that point. They might do, but they probably don't. And they probably feel like for them, it's more about a real structured check-in where we get to, have a look at them, have a look at body composition and set some goals for the next 12 weeks rather than just the week ahead. So, we might do some rep max testing, it might be body composition focused, it totally depends on that member. But yeah, it's more than about setting like a 12-week strategy rather than just the kind of week ahead.
I think you smashed that, to be honest. I think, it's a really useful session. Like you say, by that point, people tend to be a little bit more autonomous. You're sort of in the swing of things. You sort of know where your focus points are. You would have still been having your support and your check-ins up until decide to go into a quarterly point anyway. So you have that vision, but it's always nice to just have that touch point. It's quite easy to let things sort of, stray off to the side a little bit at times. So it's just nice to still have that point where you can just come together, say where are we at, how are we doing, what's working, what might not be working perhaps, and just sort of stay on that path and keep everything aligned, going in the right direction, and just keep on top of things really. So yeah, I think it's incredibly beneficial.
I think to kind of summarize on the first 90 days at equilibrium, by the end of that 90-day period, I think the surface level stuff is that you're probably feeling stronger, you're feeling like you've built some muscle mass, probably feeling a bit better in your clothes, you've got more confidence in yourself, feeling more energized throughout the day. Daily tasks is probably something we hear back from members on a regular basis, just feeling much easier, getting the dogs out, lifting things up, putting them down. But I think on a deeper level, that first 90 days has probably changed your perceptions, your beliefs around strength training. It's probably changed your beliefs around how you saw this fitting into your lifestyle. It's maybe gone from that, I just want to dabble in it for 6 weeks, to I can really see this being a part of my weekly routine and a part of the person that I want to become. I think for us, you know, people really changing their kind of, starting to sense a change in identity at that 90-day mark is where we see, you know, it really feels like the magic is really happening. Yeah, anything you'd like to add, Charles?
No, I think you smashed that one, definitely. Yeah.
Well, this was In the Balance episode 1. Great work, Charles.
Smashed it.
Thank you.